You think anything's funny now, Zaria? Kalen Vance's voice slices through the helicopter's roar, his eyes burning with venom as he glares at his gentle wife. In the serene coastal haven of Maris Cove, Zaria Cole, a radiant 28-year-old with glowing brown skin and flowing black hair, dreamed of love and family. Her fairy tale marriage to the wealthy, charismatic Kalen unraveled into a chilling saga of cruelty and betrayal. Pushed from a helicopter for a fleeting laugh, Zaria's world plummeted into darkness. Yet her survival ignited a fire that would reshape her destiny. From a forsaken island to a relentless quest for justice, her journey defies all odds, unmasking secrets and shattering empires. Subscribe now, share where you're listening from, and tell us the time. Brace yourself for a tale where Zaria's hidden strength turns vengeance into an unforgettable reckoning. The sun hung low over Maris Cove, casting a golden sheen across the sleepy coastal town where waves whispered secrets to the shore. Seagulls wheeled above, their cries blending with the rhythmic crash of the tide, while the salty breeze carried the scent of seaweed and hope. In this quiet haven, where fishing boats bobbed lazily and the townsfolk greeted each other by name, Zaria Cole moved through life with a grace that seemed to belong to another world. At 28, her brown skin glowed under the sun, her long black hair cascading in soft waves, catching the light like polished obsidian. Her warm brown eyes held a kindness that drew children to her, like moths to a flame, and her radiant smile could hush a crying toddler or brighten a neighbor's weary day. Zaria was the heartbeat of Maris Cove, a woman whose simplicity masked a quiet strength. She lived in a modest cottage at the edge of town, its walls weathered by sea air, but alive with climbing jasmine and vibrant marigolds. By day she taught at the local preschool, her voice soft as she sang lullabies or read stories of talking fish and brave sailors to wide-eyed children. By evening she tended her small garden, her hands deftly nurturing tomatoes and herbs, humming tunes her mother had taught her. Zaria's life was woven from small joys, helping a neighbor with chores, baking cookies for the town's poorest families, or laughing with her best friend Aisha over cups of chamomile tea. She dreamed of a home filled with love, of children's laughter echoing through her days, and of a partner who would share her heart's quiet hopes. In Maris Cove, where dreams were as simple as the tides, Zaria's wishes felt within reach. But the tides of Maris Cove were about to shift. One breezy Saturday, the town square buzzed with its weekly market, stalls brimming with fresh fish, woven baskets, and jars of homemade jam. Zaria stood at her modest table, her homemade oatmeal cookies arranged neatly beside a small tin for donations to the children's fund. Her laughter rang out as she handed a cookie to a freckled boy who offered a shy grin in return. The air was alive with chatter and the clink of coins, but a sudden hush fell over the crowd. Heads turned, whispers rippling like waves, as three sleek black cars rolled into the square, their polished surfaces gleaming under the sun. From the lead car stepped Kalen Vance, a man whose presence seemed to command the very air around him. At 35, Kalen was a vision of power and allure. His dark skin contrasted sharply with his tailored white shirt, unbuttoned just enough to hint at confidence. His angular face, framed by a neatly trimmed beard, carried an intensity that made hearts stutter. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the square with the precision of a hawk, and when they landed on Zaria, they lingered. The townsfolk stared, awestruck, as Kalen strode forward, his polished shoes clicking on the cobblestones, flanked by two men in suits who moved like shadows. Whispers followed him. Kalen Vance, the billionaire investor, heir to a shipping empire, a man whose wealth could reshape Maris Cove. He'd come, he said, to invest in the town's struggling fishing port, promising jobs and prosperity. To the people of Maris Cove, he was a savior wrapped in mystery. Zaria felt her cheeks warm as Kalen approached her table, his gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What's this?" he asked, his voice smooth as velvet, yet carrying an edge of authority. He picked up a cookie, studying it as if it held secrets. "Oatmeal cookies?" Zaria replied, her voice soft but steady, though her heart raced. "I baked them to raise money for the kids' school." Kalen's lips curved into a smile. one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Generous," he said, dropping a crisp $100 bill into her tin. The crowd gasped, and Zaria's eyes widened. "That's too much," she protested, but Kalen waved her words away. "Keep it," he said, his tone final. "I like a woman with a heart." From that moment, Kalen Vance became a fixture in Maris Cove. He returned weekly, each visit marked by lavish gestures that left the town in awe. For Zaria's family, he brought baskets of exotic fruits, mangoes and star fruit they'd never tasted, and bolts of fine silk for her mother to sew. To the townsfolk, he spoke of grand plans, a renovated port, new boats, a future where Maris Cove would thrive. But his attention always returned to Zaria. He lingered at her stall, asking about her life, her dreams, his deep voice weaving a spell that made her feel seen in a way she never had. Aisha, ever cautious, warned her one evening as they sipped tea in Zaria's garden. "He's too perfect, Zaria. Men like that, they always want something." Zaria laughed, brushing off her friend's concern. "He's kind, Aisha. Maybe he's just different." Kalen's courtship was relentless, a whirlwind of charm that swept Zaria off her feet. He took her to dinners at cliffside restaurants, where candlelight danced on crystal glasses and the sea stretched endlessly below. He gifted her a pearl necklace, its luster catching the moonlight as he clasped it around her neck, his fingers brushing her skin. Each gesture felt like a promise, each smile a vow that he saw her, not just the preschool teacher, but the woman who dreamed of love. When he proposed, kneeling on the beach at sunset with a diamond ring that sparkled like the stars, Zaria's heart soared. "Marry me, Zaria," he said, his voice soft but commanding. "Let me give you the world." Tears brimmed in her eyes as she said yes, believing she'd found the love she'd always prayed for. The wedding was a spectacle Maris Cove would never forget. The beach was transformed into a vision of elegance. White roses cascading over arches, lanterns glowing against the twilight, and a silk aisle leading to the water's edge. Zaria walked toward Kalen in a flowing gown of ivory lace, her hair adorned with tiny pearls, her smile radiant with hope. The townsfolk cheered, their voices rising above the waves, calling it a fairy tale. Kalen's parents, Marla and Reginald, beamed with pride, Marla's warm embrace welcoming Zaria as a daughter, Reginald's stern nod signaling approval. As Zaria and Kalen exchanged vows, the sea seemed to hum with promise, and Zaria felt her dreams taking flight. Yet beneath the celebration, a shadow lingered. Aisha watched from the crowd, her brow furrowed, her heart heavy with unease. Kalen's smile, so perfect to others, seemed to her a mask, hiding something cold and unyielding. Zaria, caught in the glow of love, saw only the man who had chosen her, a simple woman from a simple town. She could not know that the life she envisioned, filled with laughter and love, was about to collide with a darkness she could never have imagined. As the stars glittered above Maris Cove that night, Zaria stepped into her new life, her heart open, her trust complete, unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon. The cliffside estate loomed over Maris Cove like a crown of glass and stone, its sprawling terraces glinting under the morning sun. Zaria Cole stepped into her new life with Kalen Vance, her heart still aglow from the fairy tale wedding that had set the town abuzz. The mansion was a world apart from her modest cottage. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, silk curtains framed endless views of the ocean, and servants moved silently, anticipating every need. Zaria, with her radiant brown skin and flowing black hair, felt like an imposter in this opulent cage, her simple dresses stark against the grandeur. Yet she clung to hope, believing Kalen's love would anchor her in this unfamiliar world. For the first weeks it did. He was attentive, his deep voice murmuring compliments as he guided her through lavish dinners, his hand warm on hers. But beneath his charm, a shadow stirred, waiting to break free. The first crack appeared one quiet evening, a month into their marriage. Zaria stood in their expansive dining room, arranging a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked to brighten the sterile space. Kalen entered, his tailored suit pristine, his eyes scanning her with a scrutiny that made her stomach tighten. "What are you wearing?" he asked, his tone sharp, slicing through the room's stillness. Zaria glanced down at her soft yellow dress, One she'd sewn herself, its hem embroidered with tiny daisies. "I thought it was cheerful," she said, her voice small, a smile faltering on her lips. Kalen's laugh was cold, devoid of warmth. "Cheerful? You look like a village girl playing dress-up. This is my home, Zaria. Act like it." Her cheeks burned, the sting of his words sharper than any slap. She nodded, retreating to change, her heart heavy with a new, unfamiliar shame. The criticism grew, each barb more cutting than the last. Kalen mocked her gentle way of speaking, calling it childish, and sneered at her habit of humming lullabies while cooking. "You're not at that rundown preschool anymore," he'd snap, his eyes narrowing as she stirred a pot of stew, trying to recreate her mother's recipe. Zaria tried to please him, swapping her colorful dresses for the sleek, expensive ones he bought, though they felt like a costume. She practiced speaking more formally, her voice losing its natural lilt, but nothing softened Kalen's gaze. His warmth, once so intoxicating, vanished, replaced by a coldness that chilled her to the bone. Yet she told herself it was temporary, that the man who'd knelt on the beach with a diamond ring would return. The violence came swiftly, like a storm breaking over calm seas. One evening, as Zaria set the table, she accidentally knocked over a cup of coffee, a dark stain spreading across Kalen's pristine white shirt. His face twisted, a snarl escaping his lips. "You clumsy fool!" he roared, his hand flashing out before Zaria could react. The slap echoed, her cheek burning as she stumbled back, tears springing to her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling, but Kalen turned away, muttering about her uselessness. The bruise bloomed overnight, a purple shadow she hid with makeup, her heart fracturing under the weight of his cruelty. She didn't tell Aisha, her vibrant friend who'd always seen through Kalen's charm, nor did she confide in Marla and Reginald, Kalen's parents, who doted on her with warm smiles and gentle hugs. Shame kept her silent, chaining her to the hope that she could fix this. Kalen's family remained oblivious, their affection a stark contrast to his venom. Marla, with her soft eyes and kind laughter, often invited Zaria for tea, praising her warmth and calling her the daughter we always wanted. Reginald, stern but fair, spoke proudly of Zaria's work with the town's children, unaware of the darkness in his son's heart. Zaria clung to their love, a lifeline in the storm of her marriage, but it only deepened her isolation. She couldn't bear to shatter their image of Kalen, couldn't admit that the fairy tale they celebrated was a lie. Each night she lay awake beside Kalen's sleeping form, her mind replaying his words, searching for what she'd done wrong. Her dreams of a family, of laughter filling a home, began to fade, replaced by a quiet dread. The breaking point came at a charity gala in Maris Cove's grandest hotel, a glittering affair attended by the town's elite. Zaria had spent hours preparing, her sleek black gown, chosen by Kalen, hugging her frame, her hair swept into an elegant bun. She moved carefully, aware of his watchful eyes, determined to be the wife he wanted. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, and for a moment, Zaria let herself relax. A local comedian took the stage, his story about a clumsy fisherman drawing chuckles from the crowd. Zaria laughed, a soft, genuine sound that lit up her face, her eyes sparkling with rare joy. But Kalen, standing with business associates, froze, his jaw tightening. He crossed the room in swift strides, his hand clamping around her arm. "What's so funny?" he hissed, his voice low but venomous, drawing curious glances. Before she could answer, he pulled her through a side door into a quiet hallway, the music muffled behind them. "You think you can laugh like that, making a spectacle of yourself?" He spat, his grip tightening until Zaria winced. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone." Her heart pounded, tears stinging her eyes. "I didn't mean to," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It was just a laugh, Kalen." His eyes narrowed, his face a mask of disgust. "You're a disgrace," he said, releasing her so abruptly she stumbled against the wall. Hotel staff nearby averted their eyes, their silence amplifying her humiliation. Zaria stood frozen, her breath shallow as Kalen strode back to the gala, leaving her alone in the dim hallway. Tears streamed down her face, her body trembling with shame and fear. The laughter that had once been her joy now felt like a crime, and the man she'd loved was a stranger. Back at the mansion, Zaria sat in their cavernous bedroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The bruise on her cheek, carefully concealed, seemed to pulse beneath the makeup. She thought of Aisha's warnings, of the life she'd left behind in her flower-filled cottage. Her dreams of love felt like distant echoes, drowned out by Kalen's cruelty. Yet a stubborn spark of hope flickered within her. She told herself she could change him, that her love could reach the man she'd glimpsed on that sunset beach. Clutching the pearl necklace he'd given her, she whispered a prayer for strength, unaware that the worst was yet to come. In the silence of the night, with the ocean roaring below, Zaria's world teetered on the edge of a darkness she could not yet fathom. The ocean's restless murmur filled the nights at Kalen Vance's cliffside estate, a cruel reminder to Zaria Cole of the freedom she'd lost. The mansion, once a dazzling promise of a new life, now felt like a gilded prison, its marble halls echoing with her silent fears. At 28, Zaria's radiant brown skin and flowing black hair still caught the light, but her warm brown eyes had dimmed, shadowed by the weight of Kalen's cruelty. Her days were a careful dance of avoidance, tiptoeing around his moods, her once joyful laughter now locked away. Yet beneath the bruises and barbed words, Zaria clung to a fragile hope, a dream that the man she'd married might still be reached. She moved through the estate like a ghost, her gentle heart battered but unbroken, holding on to the vision of a family that could mend the fractures in her world. The first blow to that hope came on a quiet afternoon, as Zaria sat in the mansion's sunlit library, a sanctuary of leather-bound books and soft light filtering through stained glass. Kalen had left his phone on the table, its screen glowing with a notification. Zaria hesitated, her fingers trembling as she picked it up, driven by a nagging unease she couldn't name. The message was from Celine Harper, a name Zaria recognized from the gala, a stunning 32-year-old model with a commanding presence, her dark skin flawless, her eyes sharp with ambition. The words on the screen burned into Zaria's heart. "Last night was unforgettable. When can I see you again?" Her breath caught, the room tilting as she scrolled through more messages, each one a dagger of betrayal. Kalen's replies were intimate, laced with a warmth he'd never shown her. Zaria's hands shook, tears blurring her vision, as the truth settled like a stone. Her husband was unfaithful. That evening, Kalen returned late, his tailored suit faintly scented with jasmine perfume that wasn't hers. Zaria stood in their bedroom, the phone clutched in her hand, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who is Celine?" she asked, her eyes searching his for a trace of the man she loved. Kalen's face darkened, his lips curling into a sneer. "You went through my phone?" he snapped, stepping closer, his towering frame looming over her. "You don't get to question me, Zaria." She held her ground, her voice trembling but firm. "You're my husband. I deserve to know." The words barely left her lips before his hand struck, a sharp slap that sent her staggering. "You're nothing," he hissed, his eyes cold as steel. "You think you can keep me? You're not enough." The pain in her cheek paled against the agony in her heart as she realized the depth of his betrayal. Zaria retreated into silence, the weight of Kalen's words crushing her spirit. She stopped calling Aisha, her vibrant friend whose warnings now haunted her. The thought of confessing her shame to Aisha, to Kalen's kind parents, Marla and Reginald, was unbearable. They still saw her as the perfect daughter-in-law, their smiles warm when they visited, unaware of the monster their son had become. Zaria buried her pain, hiding bruises with long sleeves and makeup, her days consumed by a desperate need to hold her crumbling world together. But a new spark flickered within her, faint but undeniable. In the quiet of the night, as she lay awake, her hand rested on her stomach, a secret she hadn't dared share with Kalen. She was pregnant, only 6 weeks along, the life within her too early to show, but real enough to ignite a fierce hope. She imagined a tiny pair of baby shoes, wrapped in soft blue paper, a surprise she planned to give Kalen on his birthday, believing a child could soften his heart. Zaria poured her love into this secret, dreaming of a baby with her smile in Kalen's eyes, a bridge to the love they'd lost. She hid her morning nausea, her fatigue, determined to make the moment perfect. She pictured his face lighting up, his cruelty melting away as he embraced fatherhood. Each day she whispered to the life inside her, promising a better future, her voice a soft lullaby in the darkness. But Kalen's behavior grew worse, his absences longer, his insults sharper. He mocked her cooking, her appearance, even the way she folded his shirts, each word a fresh wound. Sarah endured, clinging to her secret, convinced that the baby would change him. She spent hours sewing tiny clothes in secret, her fingers trembling with both fear and hope, imagining a family where love would triumph. One stormy evening, as thunder rumbled over Maris Cove, Kalen entered the dining room, his eyes bloodshot from a late night. Zaria, setting the table with care, forced a smile, her heart pounding with the weight of her unspoken news. "I thought we could have a quiet dinner," she said softly, her hands smoothing her dress, no hint of her pregnancy visible. Kalen barely glanced at her, his voice flat. "I'm leaving tomorrow, a business trip." Her stomach twisted, but she nodded, swallowing her disappointment. Then unexpectedly he added, "You're coming with me. A helicopter ride to an island. We need to reconnect." His words were smooth, but his eyes held no warmth, only a glint that sent a chill down her spine. Saria hesitated, her hand brushing her stomach, the secret baby shoes hidden upstairs flashing in her mind. Maybe this was her chance, she thought. A moment to share her news, to rebuild their love. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Okay, Kalen, I'd like that." Hope flickered, fragile but stubborn, as she imagined presenting the tiny shoes under a tropical sky, his coldness thawing at the thought of their child. She packed a small bag, tucking the gift carefully inside, her heart torn between fear and longing. Aisha's warnings echoed faintly, but Zaria pushed them aside, desperate to believe in the man she'd vowed to love. As she lay in bed that night, the storm raging outside, her hand rested on her stomach, whispering to the life within. "We'll be okay," she murmured, her voice steady despite the tears. "Your daddy will love you. I know he will." The ocean roared below, its waves a restless omen, as Zaria stepped toward a journey she could not foresee, her secret hope a beacon in the gathering dark. The morning broke over Maris Cove with a crystalline clarity, the sky a vast expanse of blue stretching endlessly above the restless sea. The helicopter waited on a private helipad near Kalen Vance's cliffside estate, its blades slicing the air with a low, ominous hum. Zaria Cole, her heart a tangle of hope and dread, stepped toward the aircraft, her slender frame wrapped in a flowing green dress that caught the breeze like a whisper of the ocean. At 28, her brown skin glowed softly in the dawn light, her long black hair tied loosely, strands dancing around her face. Her hand brushed her stomach, a secret gesture to the life growing within her, only 6 weeks along, too early to show, but a quiet flame fueling her courage. She carried a small bag, the tiny baby shoes nestled inside, a gift she hoped would mend the chasm between her and Kalen. As she climbed aboard, her warm brown eyes flickered with cautious optimism, believing this trip might rekindle the love she'd glimpsed in him once. Kellen sat across from her, his dark suit immaculate, his angular face unreadable as he stared at his phone. The cabin was small, the air thick with the scent of leather and jet fuel, the roar of the engine vibrating through Zaria's bones. She glanced at him, searching for a trace of warmth, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen, his jaw tight. The pilot, a stoic man with a scar above his brow, gave a curt nod to Kalen, ignoring Zaria entirely. As the helicopter lifted off, the estate shrank below, Maris Cove's coastline gleaming like a distant memory. Zaria gazed out the window, the ocean sparkling beneath, its waves a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. She imagined presenting the baby shoes to Kalen on the island, picturing his stern features softening, his arms opening to her and their unborn child. Her hand rested lightly on her bag, the thought of her secret steadying her racing heart. The cabin's silence was oppressive, broken only by the rhythmic thump of the blades. Zaria shifted, her nerves fraying under Kalen's cold indifference. To ease the tension, she let out a soft, nervous laugh, her mind drifting to a story one of her preschoolers had told her, about a fish that tried to dance with a crab. The sound, light and fleeting, seemed to ignite something in Kaylin. His head snapped up, his eyes blazing with a fury that made her stomach lurch. "You think anything's funny now, Zarya?" he growled, his voice cutting through the engine's roar like a blade. Her smile vanished, her breath catching. I, I didn't mean anything," she stammered, her hands clutching her bag, the baby shoes inside a silent anchor. "It was just a thought, Kaylin. I'm sorry." But his face twisted, his lips curling into a snarl. "You're always making a fool of me," he spat, unbuckling his seatbelt and leaning forward, his presence suffocating. Zarya's heart pounded, her apology trembling on her lips. "Please, Kaylin, I wasn't—" she began, but he cut her off, his voice rising. "You're a disgrace, laughing like some child when I'm trying to fix this mess of a marriage." His words stung, each one a fresh wound, but Zarya's mind clung to her secret. "I need to tell you something," she tried again, her voice desperate, her hand inching toward her bag to reveal the shoes. But Kaylin was beyond reason. He stood, his tall frame looming in the cramped cabin, and grabbed her wrist, his grip like iron. Pain shot through her arm, her gasp lost in the wind as he yanked her toward the helicopter door. "Kaylin, stop!" she cried, her free hand instinctively shielding her stomach. "Please, you don't understand." But her words were swallowed by his rage. The pilot remained stone-faced, his eyes fixed ahead, as if deaf to her pleas. Kaylin's fingers fumbled with the door latch, and a blast of cold wind tore through the cabin as it slid open, the ocean churning far below. Zarya's scream pierced the air, her body thrashing against his strength. "Kaylin, no! Our baby!" she sobbed, the truth spilling out in her panic, but his eyes were void of mercy, cold as the sea below. "You've humiliated me for the last time," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. With a brutal shove, he pushed her toward the open door, her feet slipping on the cabin floor. Zarya clawed at his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, her heart screaming for the life inside her. "Please, think of our child," she begged, tears streaming down her face. But Kaylin's expression was heartless. "You're nothing," he said, and with a final, ruthless push, he sent her tumbling into the void. Zarya's scream echoed as she plummeted, the world a dizzying blur of sky and sea. The image of the tiny shoes still in her bag flashed in her mind, a symbol of the love she'd hoped to share. Her body struck the water with a force that stole her breath, the icy waves swallowing her whole. Pain exploded through her limbs heavy, her lungs burning as she fought the current. Panic clawed at her, but the thought of her unborn child, a fragile life she hadn't even named, ignited a fierce will to survive. She kicked against the waves, her arms thrashing, her hand pressed to her stomach as if to shield the baby from the ocean's wrath. The horizon was a faint line, a distant promise of land, and Zarya swam toward it, each stroke agony, each breath a prayer. Hours blurred into eternity, the cold numbing her body, but her heart burned with determination. Exhaustion dragged at her, the waves relentless, but Saraya's thoughts were of the life within her, the child Kaylin didn't know existed. Her fingers finally scraped against sand, and she collapsed onto a rocky shore, her body trembling, her breath ragged. The island was a wild, untouched place, its beach fringed with palm trees swaying in the breeze. Zarya lay there shivering, her hands still on her stomach, whispering, "We're alive, little one. We're alive." Her vision blurred, the world fading as voices approached. Soft, concerned voices speaking a language she didn't know. Gentle hands lifted her, and as darkness claimed her, Zarya held on to the spark of her child. The secret she'd guarded until the end. Now her only reason to fight. The island was a forgotten speck in the vast ocean, its shores fringed with white sand and tangled palms that swayed under a relentless sun. Zarya Cole awoke to the sound of waves lapping gently, her body aching, her brown skin salty and bruised from the sea's cruel embrace. Her long black hair clung to her face, matted with sand, and her green dress, now torn, hung limply against her trembling frame. At 28, she was a shadow of the radiant woman who'd once lit up Maris Cove, her warm brown eyes clouded with pain and fear. Her hand rested instinctively on her stomach, the fragile life within her, only 6 weeks along, a secret kept even from Kaylin, her sole anchor to hope. The memory of her fall, of Kalen's cold eyes as he pushed her from the helicopter, burned in her mind, a wound deeper than the bruises on her skin. Soft voices roused her, melodic and unfamiliar, speaking a language that danced like the wind. Zarya blinked, her vision clearing to reveal a circle of faces, dark-skinned, weathered, and kind, peering down at her. The Tavara tribe led by Mama Nia, a 70-year-old elder with silver hair braided tightly and eyes that held centuries of wisdom, had found her washed ashore. Mama Nia knelt beside Zarya, her calloused hands gentle as she brushed sand from Zarya's cheek. "You're safe now, child," she said in accented English, her voice a soothing balm. The tribe carried Zarya to their village, a cluster of thatched huts nestled among coconut groves, where the air smelled of salt and smoked fish. They laid her on a woven mat, tending her wounds with poultices of crushed herbs, their care a stark contrast to the cruelty she'd fled. Days blurred into weeks as Zarya hovered between life and despair. Mama Nia confirmed her pregnancy was intact, a miracle given the fall, but the news brought no joy. Zarya's heart was a storm of grief, her mind replaying Kalen's betrayal, his final words. "You're nothing," cutting deeper than the ocean's chill. She lay in the hut, staring at the palm frond ceiling, tears spilling silently as she mourned the life she'd dreamed of, the moment she'd planned to surprise Kalen with tiny baby shoes, now lost to the sea. Depression wrapped her like a shroud, her body healing but her spirit fractured. She barely ate, her voice silent, her once radiant smile gone. The tribe watched with quiet concern, their kindness unwavering, but Zarya felt unworthy, a broken stranger in their midst. Mama Nia became her anchor, sitting by her side each evening, her presence steady as the tides. "Our ancestors survived storms fiercer than yours," she said one night, her voice low and resonant, recounting tales of women who'd faced loss and risen stronger. "The sea takes, but it also gives. You're here for a reason." Zarya listened, her heart heavy, but the elder's words planted a seed she couldn't yet feel. The village children, led by Lila, an 8-year-old with a mischievous grin and braids adorned with shells, brought flickers of light. Lila would sneak into the hut, offering Zarya a flower or a polished stone, chattering about the fish she'd caught or the song she loved. One day Lila tugged Zarya's hand, insisting she join a game by the shore. Too weary to resist, Zarya followed, her bare feet sinking into warm sand. The children's laughter, bright and unburdened, stirred something in Zarya. They taught her a folk song, their voices weaving around her, and for the first time since the fall, she hummed along, her voice faint but alive. Lila clapped, delighted, and Zarya's lips twitched into a fragile smile, a spark of her old self breaking through. She began to rise each morning, helping the women weave baskets or clean fish, her hands learning the tribe's rhythms. The work was hard, her body still weak, but the act of creating, tying reeds, gutting fish, grounded her. She sang to her unborn child at night, soft lullabies from Maris Cove, promising a life of love despite the darkness she'd fled. The thought of her baby, still a secret held close, became her lifeline, pulling her from the abyss. Mama Nia taught Zarya the island's ways, showing her how to read the tides for fishing and use herbs to heal. One afternoon, as they gathered seaweed, Mama Nia studied Zarya's quiet face. "You carry a heavy sorrow," she said, her eyes piercing but kind. "But sorrow can forge strength. Let it shape you, not break you." Zarya nodded, tears falling, and whispered, "I wanted to tell him about the baby. I thought it would change him." Mama Nia's hand rested on hers, warm and steady. "The child is yours to protect now. You are enough." The words sank deep, stirring a resolve Zarya hadn't felt before. She began teaching the children simple lessons, letters drawn in the sand, stories of Maris Cove's stars, finding purpose in their eager faces. Weeks turned to months, and Zarya's spirit slowly mended, though scars remained. Her depression lingered, flaring on quiet nights when Kalen's face haunted her dreams, but the tribe's warmth held her steady. Lila's songs, Mama Nia's wisdom, and the village's communal rhythm became her refuge. She learned to cast nets, her arms growing stronger, her hands rough from work. The island, with its wild beauty and simple life, began to feel like home. Its people, a family she hadn't known she needed. Zarya's hand often rested on her stomach, her pregnancy still invisible, but the life within her was a quiet promise of renewal. She vowed to survive, not just for herself, but for the child who deserved a mother unbroken by betrayal. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in hues of coral and gold, Zarya stood by the shore, the waves kissing her feet. Lila ran to her, pressing a tiny shell into her hand. "For your baby," she said, her eyes bright. Zarya's throat tightened, her smile genuine for the first time in months. She looked out at the ocean, its vastness no longer a threat, but a mirror of her growing strength. Kalen had tried to erase her, but she was here, alive, carrying a life he didn't know existed. The island had saved her, and now it would teach her to rise. As the stars emerged, Zarya whispered to her unborn child, "We'll build a new life, little one. Just you and me." The sea listened, its waves a quiet vow, as Zarya took her first steps toward a future she would forge alone. The island's dawn broke with a chorus of birdsong, the sun spilling golden light across the Tavara village, where palm frond huts stood sturdy against the sea's breath. Zarya Cole, now stronger at 28, moved with purpose through the sandy paths, her brown skin glowing with a vitality born of labor and resolve. Her long black hair, often braided now with shells gifted by the village children, swung as she carried a woven basket of freshly caught fish. The weight of her pregnancy, still early but a constant presence, anchored her to a fierce determination. The despair that had once chained her was loosening, replaced by a fire kindled by the Tavera's kindness and the life growing within her. Kalen's betrayal, the fall from the helicopter, lingered like a scar, but Zarya was no longer the broken woman who'd washed ashore. The island was reshaping her, forging a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Mama Nia, the tribe's 70-year-old elder, had become her guide, her silver braids glinting as she taught Zarya the island's secrets. One morning as they sorted fish under a canopy of palms, Mama Nia's wise eyes studied Zarya. "The sea brought you to us," she said, her voice steady as the tides. "Now you must decide what you'll build from its gifts." Zarya nodded, her hands deftly scaling a fish, her thoughts on her unborn child. She hadn't named the baby yet, but its presence fueled her every move. The village had embraced her, their communal meals and laughter a balm to her wounds. But it was the children, especially Lila, the 8-year-old with a mischievous grin, who lit her path. Lila's songs and small gifts, like shells and woven bracelets, reminded Zarya of the joy she'd once brought to Mariskov's children. Zarya's transformation began with small acts. She noticed the tribe's fishing nets, frayed and inefficient, and suggested weaving stronger ones from palm fibers, a technique she'd learned from a book washed ashore with a trader's crate. The Tavara were skeptical, but Mama Nia urged them to try. Zarya worked alongside the women, her fingers callousing as she wove, her voice humming lullabies to keep their spirits high. The new nets doubled their catch, filling baskets with shimmering fish that glistened like silver under the sun. The village buzzed with gratitude, and Zarya felt a spark of pride, a feeling she hadn't known since Maris Cove. She began experimenting, teaching the tribe to preserve fish with salt and herbs, extending their trade to nearby islands. The Tavara's once modest halls grew, their market days bustling with new prosperity. The birth of her daughter Amara marked a turning point. Under a starlit sky, with Mama Nia and the village women by her side, Zarya brought her child into the world. Amara's tiny face, with eyes as bright as her mother's and a smile that echoed Zarya's own, was a miracle that banished the last shadows of despair. Holding her daughter, Zarya wept, not from pain, but from a fierce love that burned away Kalen's cruelty. "You're my everything," she whispered, cradling Amara, vowing to give her a life free of fear. The village celebrated, their songs rising into the night, and Lila crowned Amara with a tiny wreath of flowers, declaring her the island's star. Zarya's heart swelled, her purpose clear. She would build a future for Amara, one where no man could break them. A trader named Tarek, a 40-year-old man with a kind smile and weathered hands, arrived from a neighboring island, bringing books and supplies. His dark eyes lit up when he saw Zaria's work, the thriving fish markets, the sturdy nets, and he offered to connect the Tavara to larger coastal traders. Zaria hesitated, her trust in men shaken, but Tarek's respect won her over. He taught her to negotiate, sharing ledgers and strategies from his battered notebooks. Zaria absorbed it all, her mind sharp, her voice steady as she bartered with visiting merchants. Under her guidance, the village's trade expanded, their fish reaching distant ports, bringing in coins that built new huts, and a small school where Zaria taught the children to read. The Tavara called her Nuhoang Ka, Queen of Fish, a title that made her laugh, but it carried their respect, a weight she wore with growing confidence. Zaria's days were long, her hands rough from work, but each task strengthened her. She ran along the beach to build her endurance, her body lean and powerful, her spirit unyielding. At night she studied by firelight, poring over Tarek's books on trade and agriculture, her mind alight with ideas. She introduced drying racks for fish, increasing their shelf life, and planted herbs to flavor their wares, turning the village's market into a hub of innovation. Her reputation spread, traders whispering of the woman who'd turned a small tribe into a thriving force. Yet Zaria remained humble, sharing profits to repair boats and mend roofs. Her gratitude for the Tavara's kindness driving her every choice. Amara, now crawling and giggling, was her constant companion, her tiny hands grasping Zaria's as they walked the village paths. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Zaria stood with Mama Nia by the shore. Amara slept in a sling against her chest, her soft breaths a steady rhythm. "You've changed this place," Mama Nia said, her voice warm with pride, "but your heart still carries a weight." Zaria's gaze drifted to the sea, where Kalen's shadow lingered. "I need to go back," she said softly. "For Amara. She deserves to know her mother fought for her." Mama Nia nodded, her hand resting on Zaria's shoulder. "You're ready, child. The island has made you strong." Zaria's eyes burned with resolve, her once fragile hope now a blazing fire. She was no longer the naive woman who trusted Kalen. She was a mother, a leader, a force rising from the ashes of betrayal, ready to reclaim her daughter's future. The bustling streets of Maris Cove hummed with the rhythm of a town reborn, its port now thriving with ships and trade, a far cry from the sleepy village Zaria Cole had left behind. At 28, Zaria stepped off a sleek trading vessel, her brown skin radiant under the coastal sun, her long black hair braided with shells that whispered of her island life. Clad in a tailored dress of deep blue, she carried herself with a quiet power, her warm brown eyes sharp with purpose. Beside her, Amara, now a bright-eyed toddler with her mother's smile, clutched Zaria's hand, her tiny steps bold on the dock. The woman who had washed ashore, broken and betrayed, was gone, replaced by a force forged in the fires of survival. Zaria had returned not as a victim, but as a titan, her name, known as the New Huang Ka, echoing through coastal markets, her fishing empire a testament to her resilience. Yet her heart beat for one purpose, to reclaim her daughter's future and bring justice to Kalen Vance. Marisco buzzed with whispers of Zaria's return. Traders spoke of her in awe, their stories painting her as a legend who turned a remote island into a thriving hub. Zaria wasted no time, her mind honed by years of study and negotiation. She met Jalen, a 45-year-old investigative journalist with a weathered face and a fire for truth, whose dark eyes lit up when Zaria shared her story. Jalen had long suspected Kalen's empire was built on deceit, and Zaria's evidence, gathered meticulously from Tarek's trading contacts, confirmed it. Together they unraveled Kalen's web of financial fraud, from money laundering through offshore accounts to bribes that secured his dominance. Zaria provided ledgers, forged contracts, and whispers of his violent temper, her voice steady as she recounted the helicopter fall, her hand brushing Amara's hair as if to shield her from the memory. The media storm was swift and merciless. Jalen's articles, splashed across newspapers and screens, exposed Kalen's crimes, each headline chipping away at his untouchable facade. Maris Cove's elite, once his allies, turned away. their whispers now laced with scorn. Zarya moved with calculated precision, acquiring stakes in Kalen's shipping ventures through her island profits, her influence growing as his crumbled. She met with his former partners, her presence commanding, her words sharp yet calm, convincing them to withdraw support. The town watched, stunned, as the woman they'd once known as a gentle teacher became a force dismantling an empire. Yet Zarya's heart remained with Amara, her daughter's laughter a reminder of why she fought. Each night she sang lullabies, teaching Amara the Tavara's songs, vowing her daughter would know only love. The confrontation came in a sleek boardroom overlooking Maris Cove's port, the sea glittering beyond glass walls. Zarya had sent Kalen an invitation, her name alone enough to draw him, curiosity and arrogance overriding his unease. He entered, his once imposing frame diminished, his dark suit wrinkled, his eyes flickering with a mix of disbelief and rage. At 35, Kalen was a shadow of the charismatic billionaire who'd swept Zarya off her feet, his angular face now gaunt, his beard unkempt. Zarya stood at the head of the table, her posture regal, her blue dress a stark contrast to his disarray. Amara played quietly in a corner, her presence a silent testament to Zarya's strength. Kalen's gaze darted to her, then back to Zarya, his voice faltering. "You're alive," he stammered, his shock betraying his guilt. You can't be here." Zarya's smile was cold, her eyes blazing with unshakable resolve. "I survived, Kalen, despite you." Her voice was steady, cutting through the room's tension. "I've returned to take back everything you stole, starting with my daughter's future." Kalen's sneer faltered, his hands clenching. "Amara, she's mine," he spat, but his voice trembled, his confidence crumbling under her gaze. Zarya stepped closer, her presence towering. "You lost that right when you pushed me from that helicopter. The world knows what you are now. A liar, a fraud, a monster." She slid a folder across the table, its pages detailing his crimes, each one a nail in his empire's coffin. "Your time is up, Kalen. Justice is here." He lunged forward, his face twisted with fury. "You think you can ruin me? You're nothing without me." But Zarya didn't flinch, her voice calm, lethal. "I was nothing with you. Without you, I became everything. You underestimated me once. That was your greatest mistake." Kalen recoiled, his bravado shattered, as security entered, summoned by Jalen's signal. They escorted him out, his shouts echoing down the hall, empty threats fading into silence. Zarya watched, her heart steady, a quiet satisfaction settling within her. Kalen's downfall was complete. Arrested for fraud and attempted murder, his empire dismantled, his name synonymous with disgrace. Zarya and Amara built a new life in Maris Cove, their home a modest house filled with flowers and laughter, a mirror of Zarya's old cottage but warmed by her daughter's joy. She taught Amara compassion, weaving stories of the Tavera and the strength they'd given her. Aisha, tearful and proud, rejoined Zarya's life, their friendship rekindled over late-night teas. Marla and Reginald, devastated by their son's crimes, embraced Zarya and Amara, their love a bridge over the pain. Zarya returned to the island with Amara, the Tavera welcoming them with open arms. Mama Nia, her silver braids glinting, held Amara close, whispering, "You kept your promise, child." Lila, now older, danced with Amara, their laughter echoing through the village. One evening, as the sun sank into the sea, painting the sky in shades of fire, Zarya stood on the island's shore, Amara at her side. The waves sang softly, a melody of peace. Zarya's journey from betrayal to triumph, from despair to redemption, had made her a beacon of hope. Kalen's shadow was gone, his cruelty no match for her strength. She looked at Amara, her daughter's eyes bright with the promise of a fearless future, and felt her heart swell. "We did it, little one," she whispered, her voice steady, her spirit whole. The island, the sea, and the stars bore witness to Zarya's victory, a woman who'd risen from ashes to reclaim her life and rewrite her story. Zarya's journey from betrayal to triumph is a testament to the unyielding strength within us all, a story that ignites hope and resilience in the face of darkness. Her courage to rise, rebuild, and reclaim her life for her daughter, Amara, inspires us to find our own power. no matter the odds. We hope this tale leaves you moved, reflecting on the strength you carry within. Please share your thoughts in the comments. How did Zaria's story touch you? Where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Your voices mean the world to us. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. Subscribe, stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next story, where more tales of courage await.